Good evening, Pure Potential members. Think everything is working after saying that the live chat was bugging out. I had to close all my Google Chrome tabs, which was slightly devastating, but we got the browser restarted, and I think it should be working. If someone wants to send a chat message, see if it pops in. Yeah, I'm seeing it. All right, I see Nate here asking, what is this song? That's the, what do you mean? It's just the Pure Potential intro music. I wrote it and composed it myself, obviously. Austin, what's up, dude? Welcome in. I saw some other messages. They just didn't load up on my OBS over here. I see ASU fan is headed to the Super Bowl. Go Seahawks. That's awesome. Scotty wants to order some merchandise. Bro, do it. It's awesome. And, you know, shows some support to the channel. Awesome. We got Doc in the house as well. Guys, we're going to talk about some of the coaching changes around the league. I'm lying. I'm hardcore lying, Nate. I got the intro music off of some royalty-free music website. It's called Otter Funk. Otter, like the animal. So, yeah, I did not make the music. Maverick, what's up? First members only video. Glad I joined. I just saw your comment right before this. Appreciate you. Yeah, so we're gonna talk new coaching hires. We're going to talk about some of the questions that were left in the member stream channel. We're gonna talk about selling high on players. It should be a pretty packed show. Pickens and CD must sell. No. Daniel, what are we saying here? Just because of the franchise tag? This is what we expected. This is what we should have expected the whole time. I never thought George Pickens was getting out of that building. And this is the absolute best. I mean, this is the best place for George Pickens to be, realistically. I would rather him be the wide receiver 2 for Dallas than be the wide receiver 1 in Vegas or Tennessee or wherever. So no, I don't think so at all. And I don't think it's the case for Lamb either. I mean, I don't really see why. It's not really any different than like Chase and Higgins, except Pickens is younger than Higgins and honestly, like maybe a little bit more well-rounded at certain things. Super high volume passing game, good quarterback. It's totally fine for both players. Let's see here. All right, we're gonna go over here. Ignore this. I didn't set this view up at all. Let me just throw in this little chart that has the coaching changes. All right, hopefully you guys can read that. I'm just going to let it cover up my overlay a little bit. It bothers my OCD slightly, but that's okay. So what we have here are the head coaches and offensive coordinators for all 32 teams. The green ones are new hires. Yellow are unconfirmed, but Clint Kubiak most likely will be the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. So we have a lot of turnover here in the league. We have, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 new head coaches so far. I thought there were 10 vacancies. Did I forget to highlight somebody? Maybe I'm spacing on somebody. No, the rest of these look right. So 9 new head coaches, and then a lot of offensive coordinators. Let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 17 new offensive coordinators around the NFL. It is pretty crazy how much change there is. I don't have the full rundown on, what all of these players or all these coaches' tendencies are. Some of them are first-time offensive coordinators or first-time head coaches. Someone like Mike LaFleur has never called plays. So we don't know everything about these coaches by any stretch. And I'm not really even going to do a full deep dive on all of these coaches. But I do want to talk about what matters when it comes to offensive coaches. Like, what should we care about? And I'll throw out some thoughts on some of these hires. So first of all, what do we actually care? Why do we care about coaches? Well, we care about some of the big picture stuff, sort of the baseline foundation of an offense. So we care about pace of play. Are they going to run a lot of plays? Like Kellen Moore runs a lot of plays. That can really boost the floor and the ceiling of an offense. We saw that a little bit with Chris Olave this year. We saw it with Saquon Barkley the previous year, was definitely benefited. Run pass tendencies. We don't want to overfit this stuff, or I guess I should say over assume. We shouldn't bake this stuff in too much because coaches can change. They can adapt to their environments, but some coaches are going to be more pass heavy. Some are going to be more run heavy. But I do remember last year, people wanted to fade Justin Herbert and the Chargers because Greg Roman was the offensive coordinator and Jim Harbaugh was the head coach, and they were just going to want to run the ball. And, drafting Amari and Hampton was just proof that they were going to run the ball. And that's not what happened. For the first 2 months of the season, when their offensive line was healthy, they had one of the highest pass rates over expectation of any team in the NFL because Greg Roman previously worked with Tyrod Taylor and Colin Kaepernick and Lamar Jackson and a lot of quarterbacks that make sense in a super run heavy scheme. And outside of Lamar, a lot of guys that suck at passing. So different situation than having Justin Herbert. So you don't want to you don't want to bake in too many assumptions about a coach's history if the personnel is going to be way different. But we do care about run pass tendency. We care about pace. Those two things kind of set the baseline expectations. Lamb and Pickens work in Dallas because the pace is high, the pass percentage is high. That's a recipe for success. We care about running back deployment. Again, this stuff can be really noisy because backfields are going to shake out differently based on talent. And I tend to think people make a lot of assumptions about what coaches are going to do. I think a lot of times just fading that is the better move. But, some coaches are going to be more inclined to use a committee. Some coaches are going to be more inclined to have kind of a one back show. But you see, even with Sean McVay, who's been kind of viewed as a one running back coach, he has Blake Corum now, more interchangeable with Kyron. That's no longer the case. So this is very fluid. But, if you can foresee a situation like a Kenneth Walker losing goal line work, you can foresee a situation where a running back's not going to get a lot of receiving opportunities, you want to be aware of that. That's another thing is pass catching. This is partially a quarterback stat. This is partially a coaching stat, partially a running back stat. So it's hard to separate running back pass catching from all the different variables. But some coaches are going to have offenses that are more designed to push the ball down the field and not necessarily emphasize the running back in the passing game. Some schemes are going to be more predicated on that. Again, we don't want to overassume because Clint Kubiak was, I think, first in running back targets when his running back one was Alvin Kamara, and he was 31st in running back target share with the Seahawks this year with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. So, again, I made some assumptions about Kenneth Walker's receiving usage And that didn't happen this year. And that was partially based on coaching tendencies. And it turns out when your running back one is Alvin Kamara and most of your weapons are mediocre and Chris Olave is hurt, you throw to the running back. And when you have JSN and you have Kenneth Walker, who's not as much of a natural pass catcher, maybe you don't throw to running backs as much. So people definitely can overstate the impact that coaches have. It is definitely a case-by-case basis. I think one of the things we want to be looking out for is which coaches have a good bag of tricks. They have a schematic advantage. And this is more just about finding the offenses that are going to be like the Bears, like the Jaguars, that are going to make improvements, that are going to, jump up in terms of yardage and scoring, because you see this year, like that carries fantasy producers to higher levels of relevance, higher ceilings. Trevor Lawrence this year, Travis Etienne, good season. DeAndre Swift had a better season than expected. The Bears pass catchers were kind of a mess just because of injuries and like crowded room, but you can see how someone like a Loveland emerges at the end of the year. So we want to see, where do these coaches have an advantage? Those advantages are things like pre-snap motion, play action. Are they willing to, pass on first down, break tendencies? Do they run a lot of like in-breaking routes? That's not every coach, but like Kyle Shanahan, known for the in-breakers. How do they like to distribute first read targets? We have a little bit of a cheat code for this. Most of the best coaches are kind of coming from the same origin point of these like Shanahan, Shanahan tree coaches, Sean McVay. They're all kind of intertwined at this point, but that originating from the West Coast offense and then sort of mutating into what it is today is just Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay. You break that off into, Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur. So I'm trying to like conjure names of coaches that are literally listed right in front of me. So those are some of the main ones right now. And you want those guys for sure. Ben Johnson's kind of like his own thing. But very much same type of offensive coach. So we care about that. And you look at this set of coaches. Mike LaFleur, new coach for the Arizona Cardinals. He comes directly from Sean McVay. He's the offensive coordinator for the Rams. Now, he hasn't called plays before because Sean McVay does that. I'm pretty sure. I didn't actually double check that. Like, I'm pretty, 99% sure Sean McVay calls the plays. So Mike LaFleur is going to be stepping into that role. And then he hires as his offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett. That hire is disgusting. It's terrible. I hate it. Nathaniel Hackett is a hack. He's not good at his job. He never had a good offense other than when he had prime Aaron Rodgers. I don't really understand why this guy continues to get work. However, if Mike LaFleur is the one calling the plays, we should assume he's the one who's going to have the biggest impact on that offense. And hiring a coach from the McVay tree, it's not a foolproof system. Zach Taylor comes from Sean McVay. Shane Waldron came from Sean McVay. So it's not perfect. But in general, it's a promising indicator when your offensive coaching hire is a McVay disciple. So we do like that. Cardinals still have a lot of question marks, particularly at quarterback. But it could have been worse. We have Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees. So Tommy Rees, he comes directly from Cleveland. He was there with Stefanski. I don't remember if he was the OC or he was like high up on the totem pole in the offense in Cleveland. The offense in Cleveland obviously sucked, but that was a personnel problem, I think, more than anything. Clanger, what's up, dude? Tapping in from Monster Jam. I don't know what that is. Is that like Monster Trucks? I really don't. I don't know what that is, but I'm glad to see your name pop up. Who is the biggest wild card hire? I'll think about that as we go. You're biased that it's David Blau because you are a Commanders fan, but we'll take a look. So with Atlanta, I think this is a good hire. I think Stefanski's a good coach. He won Coach of the Year twice. He's been hamstrung with terrible situations in Cleveland, bad offensive lines, obviously bottom of the barrel quarterback play. I think he's a solid coach. I don't have a ton of faith in Michael Penix, but you have Bijan, you have London. Maybe they re-sign Pitts. I don't know. It's probably, Stefanski's probably a bit of a floor raiser for the offense at least. Baltimore, we have Jesse Minter. He's a defensive head coach. He comes from the Chargers, but he brings Declan Doyle over from the Bears. So Declan Doyle was the Bears offensive coordinator in 2025. He takes a lateral move here to come to the Ravens because he gets to be the play caller. So he wasn't calling plays in Chicago because that's Ben Johnson. He gets to call plays now in Baltimore. He's a young guy. I always like these young upstart offensive hires. Like, I just think you get a high ceiling there. Comes directly from Ben Johnson, so that's promising. I think I really like that hire for sure. Nico, what's up, dude? Good to see you tonight. Buffalo hires Joe Brady, promotes Joe Brady to be the head coach. Shouldn't expect a lot to change here because Brady was already handling the offense last year. It's going to stay very run heavy like it was last year. I'm not the biggest Joe Brady fan. I think the Bills are kind of botching this whole situation. Pete Carmichael was the Saints offensive coordinator from 2009 until 2023. So for 14 years, he was the offensive coordinator there. I don't really have a lot of thoughts about Pete Carmichael. I think he's just sort of a veteran presence. He's going to, Brady's going to continue to be the mind behind this offense. Carmichael's just there for some veteran expertise. I don't know how that he'll really impact what we should expect from this team. Chicago has not yet named a new offensive coordinator behind Ben Johnson. Not a super meaningful spot. Ben is in control of everything there, so not really worried about that. Cleveland goes with Todd Monken as head coach, with Travis Switzer as offensive coordinator. So Todd Monken, he comes over from Baltimore. He was their offensive coordinator this past couple of years. Wasn't very pretty this past year. We had Lamar banged up, obviously. Offensive line was way, way, way worse. But we've seen a very high ceiling from a Todd Monken offense. We saw it the previous year when Lamar did win MVP. Or actually, he didn't win MVP the previous year because Allen got it. But he had an insanely good season with Todd Monken that year. And we've seen him have some success, I believe, in Tampa Bay before. I think he's a solid hire. I don't really know what to think of him as a head coach, but I think he is a decent offensive mind. The most notable thing, I think, for Todd Monken relates to Harold Fannin, because Todd Monken worked with Brock Bowers at Georgia when he was a freshman and a sophomore, when Brock Bowers was absolutely melting faces. He's gotten good production out of the Baltimore tight ends the last couple of years, featuring, decent number 2 tight end sets. Both, I would say, inferior talents to Fannin, late career Andrews and Isaiah Likely. I don't think either of those guys are as good as Fannin, and they were splitting work. But if you combine those two guys into one player, that is going to be pretty fantasy friendly. So I think from all the coaches that we could have gotten for Harold Fannin, who's kind of a unique player, he needs a coach that has a vision for how to use him. I think this was a pretty good one. Detroit hires Drew Petzing as their offensive coordinator. He comes over from the Cardinals, where he was the OC. Kind of a puzzling hire at first. But I guess if you look at the Cardinals, really the big problem with the Cardinals is the defense being a sieve and the quarterback play being pretty subpar. I don't know that we can really stick a ton of blame on Petzing, especially with the running backs as bad as they were this past year. Couldn't stay healthy. Very inferior talents with Michael Carter and DeMarcado. So the deal with Petzing is he's pretty creative in the run game. So good for Jahmyr Gibbs. I did remember some analysis from the Underdog Fantasy guys talking about how this offense that Drew Petzing was running was very heavy on first read targets. And it was part of why Michael Wilson was having so much success, with Marvin Harrison out of the lineup and then kind of disappearing when he was back. because there were a lot of first read targets. Now, maybe that's because you have a limited quarterback in Kyler who can't get past a first read. Maybe that's the design of the offense. But I just wanted to note that for Jamison Williams, because you think of the success of Trey McBride, and you have Sam Laporta there in Detroit. You think of Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously, as the wide receiver one. If Jamison Williams isn't getting his fair share of first read targets, and the ball is going to those first reads fairly often, that could just be a bit of a concern. But we'll see if Dan Campbell's going to give play calling away or if he's going to hold on to it like he did down the stretch. That would also make a big difference. I'm not like freaking out or anything. I've already been lower than the market on Jamison Williams, but I'm not going to get back to the spot that I was last offseason. I think I was just irrationally low on him then, and I think I've gotten it to, more of a reasonable spot now. I guess I haven't given a ton of actionable takeaways here. I just don't know if there are a lot of actionable takeaways here. Holding on to Harold Fannin, I guess, would be one. I feel very good about James Cook again next year. Feel good about a Lamar bounce back, but we were already in on that. We obviously love London. We love Bijan in Atlanta. If there is any hope of Kyler resuming as the quarterback of the Cardinals, I do like the Mike LaFleur hire for him. But again, we've been buying low on Kyler. I think is a good move. He's valued very, very low. If we keep moving down this list here, we have Eric Bieniemy back to the Chiefs. The Chiefs' offense was absolutely elite during his first tenure. Now, that was prime Travis Kelce. That was prime Tyreek Hill. So there's something to be said about that. But if he's going to let Mahomes sling it, like vintage Mahomes, and they can get some weapons in there for him, I'm kind of the opinion anything is better than Matt Nagy. So this is good news. The bad news, obviously, is that Rashee Rice is not a great option for a team wide receiver one, and he could get suspended still or like go to jail or whatever. We don't know. Mahomes is coming off a multi-ligament tear, so I wouldn't necessarily project the Chiefs to be like the best offense in the NFL, but maybe by the end of the year, if Mahomes is healthy, then this offense could have a pretty high ceiling. I do think you should be buying Xavier Worthy. I just think that makes sense. Like going into year 3, he was never fully healthy last year, tore his labrum in week 1, played on it the whole year. All the red flags with Rice. You have Bieniemy coming in who, again, was there during the prime Tyreek Hill years. Xavier Worthy is not Tyreek Hill, but he has had success with a lightning fast wide receiver that can operate as a downfield threat. I'm just saying Worthy's stock has really never been lower than it is right now. And there's a lot of reasons to think he could have a better season next year than he had this past year. So there's a takeaway for you. Las Vegas, again, they're going to hire Clint Kubiak. I think it's basically a done deal. It's an awesome spot, I think, for him to walk into. The offensive line needs a lot of work, but you're going to get Mendoza at 101. You got Genti there. You have Bowers there. This is amazing for everybody involved. I think of all the candidates that were available, this is who I would have picked as like dream candidate to go to the Raiders. So I think this is perfect. I think Ashton Genti has been and is a smash buy in Dynasty. I think Bowers has been a smash buy if you could get him cheap last year. This is awesome. I don't know if Mendoza's a hit. Obviously, we never know with these 101 quarterbacks, but I think he is a very cerebral quarterback. You think of Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is a very smart quarterback. Kubiak's been able to get the best out of him. I think you pair the play calling and the creative wrinkles that Kubiak can throw out there with the talent and the mind of Fernando Mendoza, I think, is going to be a good combination. So, wheels up. I'm not saying the Raiders are a top 10 offense this year with a rookie quarterback and a bad line, but arrow is pointing up. Mike McDaniel to the Chargers as OC. He's the man on the thumbnail. This is, this is beautiful. This is what you want to see. You want to see some of the best offensive minds in the league going to be paired up with some of the best quarterbacks in the league. Mike McDaniel coaxed a borderline elite season out of Tua. I think he can get the best out of Justin Herbert. This offense you could get whiplash with how fast this offense turns around next year. If you put Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt fully healthy back on either end of that offensive line, and then you insert Mike McDaniel, you get Gadsden into year 2. You have Ladd, you have QJ, you have Trey Harris in year 2. You have this young skill group, elite tackle play on the outside. You have Mike McDaniel's play calling with a fully healthy Justin Herbert. Like, this offense could genuinely be the best. This could be the best offense in football next year. I'm not saying I would project that, but you can't point to any part of this team and tell me why it couldn't be the best offense in football, right? Yeah, I guess they don't have the best group of weapons in the NFL, but they easily have good enough weapons to be that type of offense. You don't have to have a top 3 wide receiver to have a very potent offense. So I think every player on this team makes sense as a buy in the right situation. Hampton in particular looks good. I would definitely be willing to buy low on Ladd McConkey, although I think there are probably people that are higher on him than me now, which is ironic when I was definitely ahead of the market last year. It's like I think people have underreacted to this season because of the offensive line. I guess that's what's going on. I think people are pointing to the offensive line as like the only reason that Ladd struggled this past year, and I'm kind of skeptical that it was just because the target earning was so down and the efficiency regressed so much. Like, if he still had a 26% target share, I would be right there, ready to jump back in. But when the target share dipped so much, QJ showed potential, Gadsden showed potential, Keenan Allen might re-sign. I'm not paying top 5 picks for Ladd McConkey, but in that 106, 107 range, I would be very willing to buy. Miami starts over with a new set of coaches. Jeff Hafley comes over from the Packers. He's a defensive coach. So we really have to look at the OC to say what is this offense going to be? And it's Bobby Slowick. He's an internal hire. He was with the Dolphins last year. I don't remember what his position was. It obviously wasn't offensive coordinator. I don't know what it was. But he gets internally promoted. Bobby Slowick had a pretty rough exit from the Texans offense, and his play calling left a lot to be desired that year. But he's been with Mike McDaniel for this past year, and this is hopefully good for Devon Achane, where you maybe don't expect the tendencies of the team to change that drastically. We'll see who they get at quarterback. If it's Malik Willis, I think that's going to be an interesting combination for Achane. It should be really good for his rushing efficiency, just sort of a cheat code when you pair a great explosive running back with a rushing quarterback. But it would be bad for his receiving work just because the overall pass attempts would be down. And Malik Willis is going to be more inclined to scramble than check down. Now, a lot of Achane's receiving work is schemed, first read type stuff, but you'd get less checkdowns. So I don't know if Willis would be the ideal quarterback. The ideal quarterback would be like if they went and got Kirk Cousins. If they went and got Kirk Cousins on this team, it's fully wheels up for Achane to be like, top 3 running back. You guys say you're cool moving your Achane shares. I mean, what are you moving them for, I guess, is the question. Because I'm open to shopping, and I think he probably goes a little bit higher in most startups than I would take him. But like, what are you trying to get for Achane? I would sell him I wouldn't sell all my Achane straight up for Genties, even though I have Genty ahead, just because I already have a lot of Genty and I'd like to diversify. But like, if I was getting Genty Plus, I would do that. I would tier down to Hampton Plus, but like, I don't know how big of a plus you're getting right now. I feel like you could definitely get some of the quarterbacks that I have ranked ahead, but moving a top 5 dynasty running back, just such a rare commodity, like into quarterback, is just it's a little bit awkward. So I don't know. It's not something I've really given a lot of thought to. Upgrading to Gibbs or Bijan maybe makes sense. Use him to go up and get Bowers or Neighbors. I'd rather do that than go down. I don't want to down. I don't really want to tear down to like Taylor or Cook or Olave or anything like that. I don't want to use Achane to do that personally. But yeah, there's definitely ways to do it. In a hard rebuild, I traded Achane and Flowers for Hampton, Tootin, and a 27 first. Yeah, in a hard rebuild, I think that's a good move. You get younger at running back. You get the first round pick, the upside of that. You get the upside of Tootin. I think that's a totally fine deal. And I don't have a huge gap between Achane and Hampton. I don't really have a lot of other thoughts on the Dolphins. We don't know who their tight end is right now. The only other weapon of consequence on that team is Jalen Waddle, and his outlook is, I mean, totally dependent on the quarterback. Again, you do not want Malik Willis for Jalen Waddle. If Malik Willis is Jalen Waddle's quarterback, I do not feel very good riding with him into the season, but he's not like super expensive right now either. Giants are getting an F from me. I think John Harbaugh was a fine hire by himself, but that would be with the expectation he's going to bring in some like young creative minds to run the offense and the defense. He comes around and grabs Matt Nagy to be the offensive coordinator. That sucks. I hate that. It's terrible. I don't want Matt Nagy to be the offensive mind leading and molding Jackson Dart. I'm not going full panic mode. It may impact things in my next rankings update. I'm not sure, but it's just not what you want to see. I mean, he has, when he joined the Chiefs, there was a notable decline in the quality of that offense. I just don't think he's a very good offensive designer. Malik Neighbors is going to be fine either way. He's going to get his touches. Maybe he runs some of those slot routes. He showed the capability to play out of the slot. Maybe he runs some of those Rashee Rice, like choice routes out of the slot. They mix him in on those. I don't know. I'm not worried about Neighbors, but just with Dart, who's like a raw quarterback prospect, you'd love to see a more reliable hand or at least a more innovative mind, putting him in a position to succeed. Now, Matt Nagy has let Patrick Mahomes scramble all over the place. So, not limiting the rushing upside maybe is a pro. But I have no idea what he's going to call in terms of designed runs, because the Chiefs don't really call designed runs for Mahomes. Philadelphia gets a new offensive coordinator in Sean Mannion. A lot of rough stuff happening in Philadelphia right now with the A.J. Brown drama. They're talking about him potentially or likely leaving the team. Stoutland steps away. Great offensive line coach. Rumors swirling about Lane Johnson and Landon Dickerson. It's a rough time right now for the Philadelphia offense. I think this is a good hire. Sean Mannion, former backup quarterback. Green Bay offensive assistant and quarterback coach last year. So he comes through the Shanahan tree via Matt LaFleur. If you're hiring somebody who's never been an offensive coordinator before, I want them to be a Shanahan offshoot. So that's a good thing. I like that it's a young guy and not some retread failure like Matt Nagy. So I'm cool with this hire. Obviously don't know what his tendencies are going to be, but can't be worse than Kevin Patullo. I think this is kind of a distinction without a difference. Did Nagy let Mahomes do it, or did he do it because he had to? I mean, when a quarterback scrambles, like the definition of that is that they had to do it. Like if it's not a designed run, it is an element of necessity. So Jackson Dart has shown that he has a tendency to scramble. Like it is in his mind that he wants to scramble. That's not the case with every quarterback. I'm just saying he's similar to Mahomes in that way, where he is very willing to take off and scramble, and Matt Nagy didn't limit that at all. Like there were limited aspects of the Chiefs offense with Nagy, but Mahomes rushing did not take a hit. This past year was actually his best year scrambling. So I'm just saying I'm not concerned about that, but I don't know if we'll get the designed runs, and those were a big part of what Dart was doing last year when he was really tearing it up. Steelers go ahead and hire Mike McCarthy. Heck if I know why. And then they hire someone I've never heard of before named Brian Angelico. I might have spelled something wrong there. Brian Angelico Angelico. I don't know. Apparently he is the former Vikings pass game coordinator and tight ends coach. And he was actually with McCarthy way back in Green Bay as the tight ends coach when they were both there. So they go back, they have history. We really don't have any precedent for what this guy is going to be as a tight ends coach, pass game coordinator. Vikings pass game last year was garbage, but he didn't really have anything to work with. Mike McCarthy is an offensive head coach. I don't know if he's going to call the plays or not, but it'll be his offense. And I mean, his offenses have been good. He's really only ever had Aaron Rodgers and Dak Prescott. And now he's going to have 43-year-old Aaron Rodgers or some other quarterback that's on the market. So he's going to have a worse quarterback than he had in Dallas or Green Bay previously. But I'd expect this offense to be, functional, not a total disaster. I don't expect any real success for the Steelers. It seems like they just wanted to hire another coach named Mike. They can get them a wild card exit every year. Sorry to Steelers fans, but yeah, the offense right now, you're looking at Jalen Warren and Caleb Johnson in the backfield. Having a new staff there gives you some hope that Caleb Johnson could potentially reemerge as a guy. Not that I have hope of that. I mean, I have a ton of Jalen Warren and I have no Caleb Johnson, but as someone, if you're holding him, otherwise it's just DK Metcalf on offense. Arthur Smith being gone and Mike McCarthy coming in is probably a net positive for DK, but bad quarterback play. He's going to be 28 next year, or he is 28. I think. Is he 28 or 27? I think he's 28. Somebody can look that up. Probably not going to be a great offense again. So, whatever. He's not a target. And then we have three more offensive coordinators here. Zach Robinson for the Buccaneers. I've talked about him a little bit. He was with the Falcons last year as their offensive coordinator. Some good, some bad. I don't think any of the wide receiver usage is going to translate over. They don't have a Drake London in Tampa Bay. So I don't really have any thoughts on that. The running back usage for the Falcons was interesting, where Bijan was clearly the workhorse, but they were comfortable letting Algier get in there and get some goal line touches. If he's comfortable taking Bijan on the field at the goal line, I can't imagine he's going to force Bucky Irving in at the goal line, but maybe they'll stop systemically taking him out on purpose at the goal line, and it could be good for his receiving work. We'll see. Brian Daboll to the Titans. I think that should be viewed as a positive for Cam Ward's development as a quarterback. And then David Blau, I don't know. Another former backup quarterback. He was with the Commanders already. He was the assistant quarterback coach. That's a pretty big jump from assistant quarterback coach to offensive coordinator. I guess he really showed them something that made them want to promote him. But again, young guy, doesn't really have any kind of a track record. Doesn't have a lot of experience as a coach. So I would agree with the assessment that he is one of the biggest wild cards. I'd say Blau, Mannion, Switzer. Switzer's not even going to call plays. So Blau is going to call plays because Dan Quinn doesn't do offense. So he probably is the biggest wild card. We have no idea really what to expect from the Commanders offense next year. He was working under Cliff Kingsbury, so maybe some of that stuff, but who knows? Anyway, that was a long segment. Let's get through some of this other stuff while we have the time. We had some questions here asked. I'm going to roll out a new system for submitting questions just to keep it more organized and just make it a little bit easier for everybody. But I am going to scroll up here. I'm going to save Yella's buy low, sell high question for the end because that one's a little bit more in depth. Corey asked, what's your favorite planet? He said his is the sun, which is an interesting choice for favorite planet. I'd say my favorite planet is Earth. Just because like I like living on it and I wouldn't want to live on another planet in the solar system. So that's probably my favorite. Outside of Earth though, and I can't say Pluto, it's not a planet. I'll go with Saturn. The rings are pretty cool. I'm good with that. Scoots asked, why are people so obsessed with Justin Herbert? It's because he's super handsome. And just like seems like a nice guy, I guess. He's also really, really good at football, would be another reason. But also, I don't know who people are, but there's a lot of people that are obsessed with saying that Justin Herbert sucks and is overrated. So I don't know. It kind of balances out. Like, I think Herbert has a pretty big band of haters as well. So there are the apologists that think he's really good, top 5 quarterback. And I get that annoys people, but there's also a contingent of haters that I think are far less rational than the truthers. Next one from You Ain't Got No Yeezy. Best ball Superflex tight end premium league. Won in back-to-back years. Congrats. Depleted most of my draft capital. Would you consider moving Gibbs here for a package, for some kind of package, including the 101? So we've got a team screenshot here. It's a little shallow for a best ball league. Couple decent wide receivers on the bench. Pretty rough at running back. Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see a move here. I would still want to get a really good return with Gibbs for the 101. So like right now, I have Gibbs like a late first ahead of the 101. I think in a best ball league, especially if you can get like a late first type of asset, I think that is fine. You could try for somebody in like the Jamison Williams, Jalen Waddle. Maybe you start by aiming a little bit higher. Somebody like Ladd or Rome or Higgins, somebody like that on top of the 101. Or you could go like 101 plus a 2027 first, and you could try to move that later. But I don't think you have to. I don't think you like definitely have to move Gibbs here. I think you could try trading Josh Jacobs, because you still have behind Gibbs, you still have Javonte, Ramondre, Pollard, Aaron Jones, Kenny Gainwell. You could definitely move Jacobs. You could maybe try to move him into for a future first. You can move him for another wide receiver. Yeah, moving Rice would be solid. I think there are a lot of people that are higher on Rice at this point than me. But he could end up being fine. He could end up being fine. We don't really know. Still a good team. When you have Allen, Daniels, Jamar Chase, and Jahmyr Gibbs, like, you're going to be okay. Your team's going to be competitive. But you could definitely look into it. And I would try to churn some of this depth on your bench. I'm sure there's not amazing options on waivers, but like, we do not need to be rostering Jared Wiley and Noah Gray. I guess you're just trying to lock up the future Chiefs tight end. I'm guessing the answer is neither of those guys, but I understand. And you probably don't need Greg Dulcich anymore. APN Lunchbox says, I feel like the hype for the 27 class is so high that picks are really hard to acquire. What advice would you give to struggling low-value teams projecting to have to rebuild? Are we in a zone where it's almost a forced 2-year rebuild situation? What are some moves they can be making? I wouldn't say that. I would say that 27 picks are probably going to be a little bit easier to get, first of all, around the time of the NFL draft, where people are going to get excited about 2026. People are in denial about that, but it's going to happen. And people are going to be like a little bit less focused on 2027. At least some managers are. And then I think once you get into the season, even if there are a lot of teams that want to hold those picks, there's going to be teams that want to compete and they're going to be willing to move those picks. So yes, it is going to be a harder year to get picks than most years. And you're going to have to be willing to take 2028 picks more than you might have otherwise wanted to do. But there's going to be better windows to get 2027 picks. It's just not right now. The other thing, though, you can still load up on 2028 picks and then still transition that value into competing pieces next offseason, because you're going to get those picks at a lower price point than you would get the 27 picks, and they're still going to accrue value and they're going to be more valuable next offseason. Like, think about what 2027 firsts are getting you right now. 2028 firsts are going to get you close to that next offseason. Maybe not quite the same ceiling, but like they're definitely movable for good players. So I definitely wouldn't go so far to say it's a 2-year rebuild situation. But yeah, it's absolutely going to be a little bit tougher to pry those picks away from people. Christian G 24, what would you offer for a player like Tet? I don't really know what a player like Tet is, but Tet McMillan is basically valued at 2 base firsts in the rankings, which means, 2 random hypothetical firsts that are not defined as early or late. I would not necessarily want to try to get him using firsts. Not that I'm unwilling to, but I'd like to use players. But you think of players adding up to 2 base firsts, like if you could move like a Barkley and a T Higgins for Ted McMillan, like I think value wise, that's kind of the ballpark. So he's very valuable. He's super young, amazing rookie season. I think he's maybe a guy you could try to tier up to, try to add a little bit to someone like a Garrett Wilson, a Rashee Rice right now is a guy I'd love to pivot off of to get to McMillan. If you can move an early 2026 first, like the 104 or the 103, I'd rather have McMillan. Adding to Emeka Ibuka to get him, like an early second or something on top of him, could get you there in certain leagues. So those would be some thoughts. Corey asks, when do you look to diversify off of my guy? He has about 50% each of Harold Fannin and Colson Loveland. Okay, buddy, nice flex. They're both way more valuable now. Would you look to sell high? So I wouldn't just look to sell high because they're worth a lot more, but I might look to sell some just because of how exposed you are. Now, if 50% means like 2 shares out of 4 leagues, I think that's fine. Just roll with them. If you're in like 15 leagues and you have a lot of these guys, I just think it might make sense to diversify a bit. Like I don't have more than like 30% of any player. Certainly not any player in the top 100. So with Fannin, maybe try to turn some of those into Tyler Warren. Maybe try to turn some of them into Luther Burden. You can look at guys like Ibuka, Judkins. Like you can try to buy low on some players. You can try to tier down, use him to get 2027 first round picks plus whatever. Gauge the interest in your league. Ultimately, I'm not selling these players. I'm not going to sell these players like cheaper than I think they're worth just because of the exposure. But I would look for deals that make sense for my roster construction that are at the value that I think they're worth. And if that materializes, then I think it makes sense to move them. Are you selling Drake May high in any situation? Yeah, absolutely. I would sell high on Drake May. I don't think anybody's untouchable. I've never thought that the top end guys in startups were untouchable. I don't think it's a sell high in the sense that like his value is about to drop back down. I don't view him that way. I think he was an MVP candidate this past year. He scored like 1 point per game less than Josh Allen His offensive situation has room to improve. He can run more, like if he is put in that position. So I don't see any reason why he would lose value, but there are teams where having that top end quarterback is hard to maintain when the rest of your roster value starts to depreciate. So if that's the case, then yeah, I think it makes sense to shop around. Maybe you can get a huge return to tier down to like Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence even. And you can really upgrade another position. I think that is reasonable. What would you do with a team that seems to always be stuck in 7th to 9th place? Can't seem to win or get a high draft spot. I mean, any team can get a high draft spot. You just have to commit to it. And this is probably the best year of any year to do that. So if you have a team that you feel like is stuck in the middle, that is not a super valuable team already, and it can help to go to like Keep Trade Cut and their team. You can look at their team, their like league breakdown, and you can look at all the teams in your league in order of roster value. If you're sitting at 7 or 8 in that range, I mean, really anywhere outside the top 5, and you also don't have a very productive roster, then yeah, you want to tear it down, and you want to try to get the 101, and you want to really rebound in your buying power, and then you can try to build a team that can get you over the hump. But yeah, you have to eventually you just have to commit to the rebuild, which means trading away players. You know, trade away all your running backs, every single one on the team. Trade away, you know, whatever you have to trade away to get to the bottom of the standings, and turn those players into rookie picks, 2027 first, 2028 firsts, stack up late picks, you know, move high producing older players for rookies that aren't producing as much. And then you get that early pick and everything rolls over into the next offseason. And all of a sudden you're, you know, up huge in value. Jimbo says, what about Caleb versus May? You could argue Caleb's situation will be more fantasy friendly. You definitely can argue that. And I would argue Drake May is just better than Caleb Williams. I mean, I think Caleb showed some really cool stuff in the playoffs. He definitely improved this year compared to last year, especially at taking sacks. Drake May led the NFL in completion percentage. Caleb Williams was like almost last in the NFL in completion percentage. So I still think we're talking about a different caliber of player as far as like consistent performance week to week. Caleb is my quarterback 5 in Dynasty, so I'm not fading him. I have him ahead of Herbert. I have him ahead of Burrow. He's my 18th overall player. But for me personally, this isn't a comparison because I think May is just as good of a rusher as Caleb, and actually has shown to have maybe a slightly higher tendency to do it. And he is a better passer than Caleb. So yeah, the situation for Caleb is a little bit better. But you can also argue that for May, the fact that they could draft a wide receiver in the first round, that they could improve the offensive line, that they could get more success out of their run game, all of those things could actually be viewed as positives. That May outscored Caleb this year, with that being true, and those things could, you know, not be problems at some point. Jake Burt 91. In a unique league where our offensive players also get points for defense, like tackles, picks, etc., how much higher would you rank Travis Hunter? For some context, Hunter averaged 3.5 defensive points per game this past season. I would value him a lot higher, because what that does is it really insulates the floor. Because basically, no matter what, you're getting a full-time player in Travis Hunter. So you bake in all the upside of him being a full-time wide receiver, and you have this fail-safe, well, if he only plays 50% of the snaps on offense and the rest is defense, then you get all that too. So I would value him a lot higher. I'd have him valued like, I'm looking at the rankings right now. Like I'd probably have him in the top 40 or like in that range, like I'd have him near Garrett Wilson and Trevion Henderson at least. Because you're just you're free rolling the talent with Hunter. Like, he's going to be good on one side of the ball or the other. And between offense and defense, he's going to play at least 100% of snaps, ideally probably higher than 100% of snaps. So the ceiling's very high there. So I think I've never played in a league like that, but if you forced me to decide, I would probably take him in the third round of a startup, like right near where I have Luther Burden ranked. Would be interesting to see, this is from Ooze, if I have any startup guidelines that I try to follow. I haven't done any I did one startup in early January, and I haven't really done anything. I haven't done one since then, and I didn't really feel like anything had really materialized as far as like a market. I'd say right now, some things I would definitely try to do. I'm not very big on trading down in the early rounds. I want to be getting as many superstar players as I can. So I'm actually more inclined to try to trade up into a startup, into the early rounds and get another superstar player. Not looking to move my 2027 first in the startup unless I'm getting a crazy deal that, again, nets me a superstar player. I am very interested in taking 2026 picks in startups right now because they are free falling, as I mentioned in the last video. I don't really have any guidelines as far as like take these positions in these spots. I don't think you need to do that. I'm drafting for value, so I'm looking for where the best value pockets are. I'd say that the like 6th and 7th rounds are kind of weak as far as values. So I'd be maybe interested in trading up or trading down from those ranges, or like using those picks to like move one of your picks higher and one of them lower and getting out of that range and getting a better player a little bit earlier. So those would be some of my thoughts. I definitely like trying to trade down when I don't have a strong preference, picking up even just like future thirds, future fourths to move down a few spots, take advantage of people that are a little bit antsy in the draft room. But yeah, I'll definitely dig into startups a little bit more and see like what the ADP looks like. And I will try to get a video out maybe late this month or early in March with like an early startup draft guide. I did that last year and that did well. People liked it. So I'll get on it. I'm actually going to try to join at least one startup in the near future. So that'll give me some frame of reference. All right, I think last question for today is going to come in from, well, Jimbo said, can you give me some easy trades to trick the noobs so I can improve my record? Unfortunately not. I don't know if I have any easy trades off the top of my head. Again, I do think Kyler Murray is a pretty good buy low. Daniel Jones too. But B, that's just his name, just the letter B. Maybe too niche, but in my circles, half PPR has become a lot more popular. Oh, are we lagging out, guys? I just saw something just like dropped. My green internet connection dropped to red for a second. I think we're back. So B asked about half PPR and non-tight end premium and how much those format changes would change the rankings. So I have had this question a few different times. Not that I mind it being asked again. I know it's like hard to catch every stream and remember everything that you hear, but I don't have a great like overall answer for how it changes the rankings because I think it affects kind of each tier differently. I'll start with non-tight end premium. Non-tight end premium, that's going to knock Bowers and McBride down because you think about in tight end premium, you're expecting Bowers and McBride to basically be able to produce like an Amon-Ra St. Brown, like a Drake London, like a CeeDee Lamb, basically matching their points, maybe not having the exact same high-end ceiling outside of a perfect situation, but basically being able to match their median outcome and doing it at a position where you have an advantage. But when you get into the later tight ends, and I don't even mean that far down, but like you get into the Sam Laporta range, and all of a sudden that's out the window. You're never really expecting a tight end to be like a great flex option, versus you're not expecting a tight end to be a good option versus an equivalently ranked wide receiver. The tight end 8 is going to get absolutely dog walked by the wide receiver 8 or even the wide receiver 16, most likely. So you're not ever viewing tight ends as viable flex options in non-tight end premium. And so what that does is it just sort of devalues the entire position outside of the elites a great deal. So somebody like an Oronde Gadsden, I think is super intriguing as like a late first round value in tight end premium. In non-tight end premium, he's like, Gadsden versus like 204 is a real question, I think. Because again, you're not really getting that high end production out of him. And he's really only doing anything for you if he's your starting tight end. So it kind of wipes out any interest I would have in like a Dalton Kincaid. Not that there's a ton of interest there, like a Brenton Strange. Really, if I'm not getting an elite guy or a young player like a Loveland that has that elite ceiling, I'm just kind of fine punting the position. I'll start like AJ Barner. I'll start Hunter Henry. I'll start Theo Johnson. I don't care. Half PPR, if you combine half PPR with non-tight end premium, everything I just said gets even more extreme. Tight ends are like basically worthless because the tight end position is so tight ends don't rack up yards as much as wide receivers do. So they're actually even more affected by the half PPR because a higher percentage of their points come from receptions. And so you actually get to the point where like the majority of tight ends are scoring like 7-8 points per game. And the higher end guys don't have as much of an opportunity to gap the field because you look at like a Trey McBride, what does he bring to the table? He gets 1 million receptions. All of those receptions are worth less in half PPR. So even the top end guys aren't separating as much from the middle tier, and it's just a mess. So I think generally the elite tight ends are always overvalued in half PPR, non-tight end premium, and I would just be selling them to the highest bidder. And I would really only invest in somebody like Brock Bowers in that format if my team was so stacked that I didn't have anything else to spend on. Now, if it's half PPR and tight end premium, then flip everything I just said. Because that means in full PPR, half point tight end premium, a tight end is getting 50% more points per reception than a wide receiver. In half PPR, 0.5 tight end premium, a tight end is now getting 100% more points per reception than a wide receiver. And so now you do want to flex tight ends, like Nico is saying in the chat, over wide receivers. So I'm in one league that does that, and I flex Juwan Johnson all season with Harold Fannin in the tight end spot. So it is different. If it's half PPR with tight end premium, those tight ends are back on the menu and probably undervalued relative to what they're giving you. So these nuances really do exist. If it's just half PPR, non-tight end premium though, getting away from the tight ends, half PPR, the main difference there is just that running backs become far and away the best flex options compared to wide receivers. It's not really going to change anything within your individual wide receiver rankings. There's just not enough of a difference in guys like in wide receiver archetypes. I guess you can put a little bit more weight on players that are more likely to score a lot of touchdowns, like a Jamar Chase, maybe like a Drake London or something, versus a wide receiver that is more built on raw receptions. But that's pretty small. And then at running back, again, if you actually look at the difference, if you looked at the overall running back rankings for PPR and half PPR, they barely change. Like some guys would flip spots, but it's not a big difference. So really the only difference that I think is actionable is that you want to build your team so you can put running backs in the flex and not wide receivers in half PPR. So take all the running backs in the rankings, shift them up, or I guess take the wide receivers and shift them down a little bit. And that's really it. All right. Good questions. Papacino had a cool suggestion for taking like articles or like content that I've consumed and summarizing it and sharing it within a stream as like a small portion of that. I think that's a really cool idea. I wrote it down. Don't have any time to jump into one of those today, but maybe I'll do one of those next week. So I'll write that down. Otherwise, guys, I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back with another video on Thursday. I don't think I have a live stream planned for this week, but at some point I'm going to do like a big trade review type of show. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try to set up another live startup draft late this month or maybe early March. But yeah, this upcoming week, the video should be on trading players for 2026 picks. So keep an eye out for that. I'll see you all in the Discord, and I'll talk to you later.